In a public session today to help the State Advisory Committee on Criminal Justice and Delinquency Prevention to develop, to get input in developing their work plan. Can I ask that any conversations, please stop so we can go ahead and start this part of the meeting? Thank you. So normally in this part of the meeting, first let me say that this part of the session is being video. And so it is available for viewing later through the DSCC. Normally, we would ask each public member that is interested in providing comments and testifying to fill out a card. We have a time limit. Let me just check in with staff in terms of how much time each member is provided.
It really is at your discretion. I would say probably 2 minutes, maybe 3.
Given that we have a lot of community members and we only have an hour and a half, excuse me, members. Given that we only have an hour and a half, I'd like to limit the comments to 2 minutes. If we have additional time afterwards, we can certainly allow folks to come back and to finish any comments that they'd like to make. I will be asking staff to please give the community member kind of a sign when their time is up so they can, wrap up their comments. Again, I just want to reiterate that it's really important for us to hear your comments. We are very interested in hearing what your thoughts and your ideas are as this commission develops what the priorities will be for the state plan. For those of you that were here during our committee meeting, we heard that there was much discussion on us developing priorities for our plan and for subsequent funding. And so part of us being able to do that is to hear your voices in terms of what you feel is important for us to consider. So with that, the process that we use is that we will have a list and staff will call the names of the folks that are on the list that wish to speak. There may be opportunities that members want to ask follow-up questions, and that's okay. We encourage you to do that, but we do want to recognize members that we are on time, and so please, if you would look to me so that I can acknowledge you versus just speaking out to the community member. I think we would be able to go a lot quicker. Okay, so with all that said, could staff please call our first community member that is interested in providing public comment?
Sure, Madam Chair. I just asked informally over here of our community members who are present, and thank you so much for being here. On behalf of BSCC, I just want to welcome you. I only have one name, and what I have noticed in other listening sessions is sometimes people will certainly decide to come up even though they haven't put their name on the list. So I will call the one name, and that is Roy Brown. Come up with this comment.
And as with our community member coming up, I think what would be nice is so that we can introduce ourselves to community members so that they know who the SACJAP members are. So my name is Rachel Rios, I'm the chair of the SACJAP.
Winston Peters.
I'm Nancy O'Malley.
John K. Williams.
Brian Back.
I don't mean to have you guys go back, but it would be nice if they say who you represent so the community member knows what you're representing, area and. So,
Okay, I'm Winston Peters, Assistant Public Defender.
I'm Juan Gomez, community activist out of New Salinas.
And I'm Nancy O'Malley. I'm the district attorney for Alameda County.
John K. Williams, Youth Advocate Manager of Probation Chapter.
I'm hoping I haven't lost my job between the last time I told you that
I'm Kimberly Bouchard, staff at the BSCC.
Hello, I'm Katie Howard, Executive Director of BSCC.
I am Sharon King, I represent compliance.
Hi, my name is Miguel Garcia. I'm Riverside County, the Western Regional Representative with CJJ.
Hi, Carol Biondi from Los Angeles, LA County Commissioner for Children and Families.
Ken Mendoza, formerly incarcerated policy coordinator at Anti-Recidivism Coalition. I'm Susan Barber. I'm a staff attorney at the Center for Juvenile Law and Policy here in Louisville, Washington.
And I'm Ramon Lekan. I'm a youth mentor, also formerly incarcerated. I'm a student at UCR, coming out of Riverside County.
So if you could say your name and.
I'll keep this very brief. My name is Roy Brown. I've been a police officer for 22 years. Currently assigned to San Marco Police Department Youth Services Division. And we just recently implemented a diversion program. And I just wanted to stress the importance of what we found out, especially in my 20 years being a police officer, that assessment, doing some sort of assessment upon initial contact with our youth when they enter the criminal justice system in the police department, as well as providing the youth and the family services initially upon that initial contact with the criminal justice system. We found it started to work for us. We've been doing it for a couple months, maybe about almost a year now. And we've been able to direct and assist a lot of youth and their families and services by doing that assessment. We think it's very important to have that as one of our goals and focuses for youth.
Well, can I ask you a couple questions?
Yes.
What assessment instrument do you use?
YASI, what's it, youth
Assessment screens.
youth assessment screening instrument.
And what diversion program?
City of San Marco Police Department.
Do they go to the assessment finance, go to a community-based organization? And if so, does that community organization reflect the lives of these young people from hardship, which is impact their foster care, etc.?
So for our program, it's for most of it, it's first-time offenders for minor infractions. So instead of entering them into the justice system, we do an assessment. That's a scientific tool. We use that, and we determine the risk level to reoffend, and then from there we'll determine what type of program that we put them in.
Yeah, but something how you determine the agency that you go to
Based on the relationship that we've developed. We're still trying to reach out to more, but it's only we're limited to what we developed.
A lot of officers that I've spoken with have basically said, hey, we know these families, we know these people already, it makes sense, and they want to engage in front of them. You find that same experience?
Yes. Yeah, we get a lot of people who just want referrals, want assistance, but unfortunately right now we don't have the resources and capacity. We have to wait until somebody offends before we can do it, but we're trying to get to the resources and capacity to be able to reach people before they offend.
And do you find that there are enough services available to refer them to?
Yeah, I just want to clarify something. So what we do is actually, we're lucky enough to be in the city of Santa Monica with an initiative that has many social service agencies, some that are human service grantees, and that's kind of really where it is that we refer many of our students to. So either individual organizations, or there is a city collaborative called the Youth Resource Team, where we tend to refer our more high-need, high-risk kids. I'm sorry, what was your question?
Were there services available?
Yeah, so most of it is mental health services or substance abuse services, family counseling, that type of stuff.
What's your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, my name is Ana Jara, and I am a civilian employee with the police department.
Do you have any idea how many youth you interact with a month? I mean, or since this program started?
Since the program started, we've seen roughly about 45 youth, and for us, again, it's not a referral based, it's really they have to commit either an infraction or a misdemeanor, and that's how it is that they come to us. But we're hoping that down the line it'll be a referral.
Thank you so much. Do we have anybody else?
Kim McGill?
Hey everyone, my name is Kim McGill. I'm an organizer with Youth Justice Coalition, and I had my first felony at the age of 12, and I was a felony at 13, and then had several misdemeanors after that as well with an adult. So I come to you not only as an organizer, but from an organization led by formerly incarcerated people and our families. I have to say that the only time I really felt appreciated and supported as a young person was when my family sent me out of desperation to the South Bronx. At the time, the South Bronx was, I was about 5'6" when I first got sent there. It was coming off of the most brutal bankruptcy in New York City's history. The South Bronx was totally burnt down. It was like a war zone. I would walk past brick rubble, We lived in buildings that were what were called HPD, Housing Preservation Development, which oftentimes didn't have heat and hot water. Yet I felt safer there than I did in the streets of Los Angeles. And I came to realize as I was going back and forth between LA and New York why that was. And so I really want to highlight not so much the survey and the individual silos of programs that the survey kind of points people to as solutions, but more the vision that's lacking in Los Angeles and California. If you go to the top of this roof on this building and you look just slightly east, you'll see the largest jail system in the world, with Med Central Jail, Twin Towers, and it's part of an 8-jail complex. Some jails empty, some filled. It's also connected to the largest sheriff's department in the world, the largest probation department in the world. We have the largest youth prison system in the world in our county, the largest juvenile halls in the world. And we historically and currently, going back 150 years, created the war on gangs, created militarized policing, created an addiction to incarceration, which we've now exported throughout the state and throughout the nation. And I think it's important to talk about LA's history and how we've exported that history to the rest of the state before we can ever talk about what young people and our families need. So this is my best thinking about what this committee could do to transform the real future for all of us in Los Angeles and beyond to all of California. First is that there needs to be a youth development vision for California. And in your document, it talks about positive youth development. Positive youth development is a trademark term that an organization that does training of some kind in lockups uses. All youth development by definition is positive. It's not youth development. And I don't want to confuse it with a trademark program. So just call it the youth development vision. Secondly, that we need a definition for what is community-based owned and operated. Because we're seeing a huge mission landslide among law enforcement, so that the small funds that do come down to to counties and cities are mostly going to law enforcement, to DAs, to probations, to law enforcement. I'm already out of time.
Okay.
So that,
As opposed to the community-based owned and operated organizations that they were intended for. So we encourage you to have a really strong definition that you stick to, that organizations that get the funds are based in community, run by people indigenous to that community, and are operated, again, by people that live in that area. We encourage you to look at reinvesting suppression dollars toward youth development because there's been such an imbalance. I'll just talk to you about LA as an example, LA City, one of 88 cities in LA County. Again, where the roots of mass incarceration, particularly mass incarceration and deportation of people of color, comes from. And when you look at the LA City budget, nearly 54% of the budget goes to LAPD. At a time when our violent crime and all our crime rates are down to their lowest levels since the 1950s and 60s, and even with the small blips that we've had in some areas of our city, they're down again, the most violent crimes, including homicide, down again from last year. We've seen a huge increase in law enforcement expenditures. We have half of our population of our juvenile halls is gone, our juvenile halls are at 50% capacity, our probation camps at 60% capacity, yet in the last 10 years, the sheriff's budget has gone up by $1 billion, the probation budget has gone up by $350 million, and the LAPD's budget has gone up by $700 million. If you compare youth development, there's no youth development department in LA County or LA City. That's true for most counties across the state. And where you get the best outcomes is where youth development departments exist, in San Francisco and Alameda County. But in LA, where you compare, we have an animal control department and we spend $13 million more a year to protect stray dogs than we do to protect young people from violence. We only spend $35 per youth. That's less than what young people, even young people with no income, disposable income other than what they spend on potato chips, spends and gives back in tax dollars to the city. We urge you to have a youth development vision that prioritizes these things that young people collected on surveys on a 50-mile march across LA County, where they started at Silmar Juvenile Hall over several years and ended in Norwalk, where there used to be a California Youth Authority before it was renamed DJJ. And the overwhelming number of LA's responses, they could have picked more gang injunctions to deal with violence, they could have picked more police to deal with violence, they could have picked lock up more people. The survey gave equal weight to all of those responses. But when people overwhelmingly picked to address violence and safety in neighborhoods was youth jobs, youth centers, and intervention workers. Intervention workers are people that have roots in the community, oftentimes with convictions. They're oftentimes blocked from working on any kind of probation-funded programs, even as contracts, because of our convictions. Yet those are the people that have the strongest ties in communities and most able to talk people out of violence, to address retaliation, to address rumor control. Next, to focus on all of your programs on 4 areas that we think are really, if they are focused on in California, haphazardly focused on, and never with intensity and never all 4 together. One is demand data transparency, not only in all your programs, but in all your government agencies. Who's getting locked up by race, by genders, by zip code, by charge? Why is it so young people in some parts of the counties are getting treated so differently than young people in another area? Secondly, focus on diversion, and not just diversion from arrest, but diversion from all police contact. We now have 17,000 young people in LA County under WIC 236 involuntary, it's voluntary, but we would call it involuntary probation. These are young people that haven't even had court contact yet, but are answering or responding, going to probation officers and DAs in their schools, usually 81% for minor things like court grades, school attendance, things that would be better served and more cheaply served by an after-school program.
Paid for by JJCPA.
Paid for, yes, by state dollars. Third, focus on decriminalization. Where are there whole sections of our penal code that can be taken out and eliminated altogether from police contact? So for us in LA County, we realized that ticketing was vicious. Young people would get a $250 ticket for truancy, and it would quickly become a $900 ticket. It would bankrupt families, bankrupt young people, and then it would stay on their record and continue to get their driver's licenses, sometimes 5, 6, 7, 10 years later. When there was budget cuts coming to our courts, we advocated very strongly to close the municipal traffic court. We had no bump in youth delinquency, but all of those tickets have been erased. And then when we realized that probation couldn't even handle the 250,000 past tickets that were diverted to them, we also pushed for amnesty and erased 250,000 tickets in LA County. At the state level, they fought similarly. We saw that 10,000 tickets a year were handed out for young people for fare evasion. For just a fraction of what law enforcement gets, for example, in LA County, $120 million a year is given to LAPD, LA County Sheriffs, and Long Beach PD to patrol the trains and buses. Less than 20% of that could provide a free train pass for every single young person in LA County, kindergarten through college. So why invest so much in suppression when you could eliminate all kinds of fare evasion checks and eliminate the contact that young people have, oftentimes with illegal searches and seizures, oftentimes with ticketing, oftentimes that lead to a warrant and arrest, and even jail or juvenile hall time? You could eliminate all that and give young people access to healthcare, to jobs, to museums, to parks, to playgrounds, to beaches, just providing them public transportation. And then finally, focus on decarceration. We are at a historic time when our juvenile halls and our camps across the state are half empty. This is our moment to close dilapidated facilities and to create a vision that we have in other parts of the country and other parts of the world, where young people are no more than 50 miles from their home when they are removed, but that they're rarely removed. The young people are kept in families and in communities. And our county and our state has operated with a racist policy and a racist vision for a long time, now for over 100 years. That young people of color have to be removed from their families and from their communities in order to thrive. But the data is in. Young people do better when they're in their families' home and environment, or at least in their family's radius. And young people do better when they're kept in community. So we need to, if we're not going to focus on what's right in our hearts and what's moral, we need to be led by the data, which says keep young people at home. Finally, I would say that your leadership in the state could push for there to be a statewide youth development department. The young people at their county level, at their city level, and at their state level have no home other than when we get in trouble. You never have any contact with local government until you're arrested or until you're referred to a principal's office. This is not the norm for other counties in the nation. It is not the norm for other countries. We lag far behind Europe, Africa, South America, even Central America, that already have robust definitions for youth development and youth development departments, as well as youth development spending. Just as one last thing to think about, if we took just 5% of what we spend in LA County, with just our largest departments, we have 57 different law enforcement agencies in LA County. Overwhelmingly, the police contact is immense, including the largest school police department in the nation. But I'm not even talking about all 57. Just take 5% of the budgets from LAPD, LA County Sheriff's, District Attorney, City Attorney, and Probation Department. That would give us $236 million a year. And that in turn would fund 100 youth centers, each with $1 million budget, 50,000 youth jobs, and 1,000 intervention workers or peace builders on our streets and in schools. Without that kind of minor crumb investment in communities, you're basically guaranteeing that the next generation of young people will either die in the streets or die behind bars, or be relegated to low-wage work and dehumanizing conditions at work. I know that you can't fix all these things within your budget, but you're the leaders in the state that have a mic, that have access to state and county officials, and that's what we're counting on you to do. Thank you.
Kim, when you say a state youth development office, what do you envision when you say that?
So in other states, and certainly in other counties, countries, sorry, a statewide youth development or a region-wide youth development department also takes supervision of young people who are in trouble with the law. What other nations call in conflict with the law, because they don't even assume that you're guilty or that your one worst act is all about who you are. And so in the best scenario, young people wouldn't even be under probation supervision, wouldn't be under local police jurisdiction. They would come under a youth development department, and they've had better outcomes in those countries and those counties. In those US counties that use it, in those US states that use it, and in those other nations that use it, they have much lower recidivism rates. And so it's a youth development department that handles diversion, in some rare cases housing for young people that are coming in contact with the law. But they also provide everything young people need, employment, career planning, help with school, including after-school programming, remediation, college prep, arts programming, recreation, health, mental health, legal supports. That's what a comprehensive youth development department does. They also train the groups on the ground. So MILPA's here, an incredible organization, us, Youth Justice Coalition, those grassroots groups have no access to training and technical assistance and support, so we can get better at what we do. We do everything that we do, usually against all odds. We survive, you know, right? In other states and in the best-run counties, there's a whole training institute. In some cases, there's college tracks. You can become youth workers or intervention workers or social service workers.
What's the best one? I mean, what would you model?
Excuse me, I might want to suggest that, maybe afterwards, you could go into a lot of.
New York,
we-
okay,
we-
thanks.
New York is one, yeah. And
Thank
you've given us some really amazing
Thank you.
information, and I hope that someone's taking notes on a lot of these issues because you've really laid
Oh, I
out.
thought you said it was being
nice
taped.
way. It is being
Okay.
taped, but also.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have our next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Detective Sergeant Kim. I work with the Guardian Police Department. I'm currently the director of our Juvenile Justice Intervention Program. Just a few.
Sorry, where did you say you're from?
Guardian City of Gardena in Los Angeles County. We've also implemented, much like Santa Monica, the Juvenile Justice Intervention Program that's actually directly run by the police department. And what we do is we bring in high-risk youth and those youth that are charged with minor violations into our program. We divert them into our program. If they are cited, where we have a team of social workers that will conduct an assessment of these individuals, and then from there link them to necessary needs, to meet whatever their needs. My vision within this program is to provide everything that we possibly can. So we'll link them to mental health assistance, financial aid, tutoring, substance abuse programs, prevention, in and outpatient treatment, basically whatever it takes. One thing I've learned from my social workers, and if I desecrate any social work town police department, just a dumb straight cop, forget this wrong. But I've learned something about the holistic approach to providing assistance to these youth. My takeaway from that is the word list. What I do is I want to reach back as far back as we possibly can. My dream is to get into the families, get into, in any case, I've gone off track. That's just a brief description of our program. My question was, just some clarification in terms of the survey that you're about to conduct. The two cities that you've chosen, Sacramento and San Diego, will be the only cities that will be involved in this?
Now, there's a public survey that's open to anyone, anywhere. It's online. We have links to it, we make sure that it's distributed, we're asking all of our members to distribute it widely. Any community members can forward it and distribute it widely, it's open to everyone. We were looking at having interested interviews with juveniles who are currently detained, and we were looking at 2 counties to do the in-custody interviews.
Oh, so this would be the detainees, that
In the team.
would be the 230. Okay. My coach was gonna be, you know,
Why
they
those
truly,
two? Yeah.
they truly represented the population of California, so. Okay, that's it. The next thing was, I noticed in terms of the grantees, that are listed on here, and I noticed that there seems to be something of a little bit of a lack. And I kind of wanted to jump on your bandwagon, Kip, with it. This funding to Los Angeles seems to be kind of missing. I was looking at the list of grantees, the generals of grantees.
Those
Yes.
are different grant.
How do we break into, because that's one of the biggest struggles that we're facing right now, which is funding. How does a small department that's not part of a huge county, you know, like Kern or, you know, Ventura or whatever, how could we break into something like this? Especially when we're trying to develop this program in response to our youth and the community. We have a serious investment in this, but I myself personally am facing a huge finance wall. Been able to wheel and deal. I've got a lot of community groups out there that are willing to donate time, but that's a finite supply. That's a very finite resource.
You mean in terms of looking for grants?
And I guess yes, yeah. How does a small department like ours break into something like that?
So let me just say that the list that I think you're looking at is for a different funding source that this committee is not in charge of. That is, am I correct?
That's the chair grant that you was speaking about.
Right.
Yes. different grant.
There is another committee, if you want to talk about that, who's in charge of that funding. What this committee is in charge of is Title II funding for juvenile justice and delinquency prevention. And that's part of what our work is right now, is trying to get feedback from the community in terms of what our priorities should be, so that as we develop our plan for the next 3 years, we can also look at what our funding priorities are. And then the next piece of our work will be to develop a solicitation with those priorities. So we haven't gotten to that piece yet. And we're familiar with Gardena, and I know that it's an area that has a high impact. And so I think as we develop our priorities for what the committee and hearing from the public, what's important and how we best can address the issues of juvenile justice issues for young people, that would be reflected in the solicitation that then can be widely distributed in agencies like Virginia.
I don't envy you your job in that determination, but I do ask or challenge you to consider that there are a lot of small departments that are really putting good faith effort to really address this problem. Applying it a lot in terms of that, just a lot of difficulties. I mean, just getting the community to invest. I mean, you've got top culture, we've got to overcome that, get them to invest, and then bring it out to the community and have them trust what we're going to do, what we want to provide. I mean, multiple barriers to overcome. Please, just keep that in mind. And my last problem. This is a problem that I face within our program. So I needed to give a description of our program earlier so that you can understand this. Many of the youth that are sent into our program for diversion are generally cited for minor infractions. Usually it's truancy, maybe minor possession. If possible, we will do an assessment on youth that engage in more higher level crimes. In that situation, I've got the site, I can bring them in, and that's kind of like, I don't know, for lack of a better term, that's what we force them into this program. I'm willing to do everything to the border of ethics to get these kids in this program. I'm willing to get in this program. They need to be in these programs. And I'll do everything I can. But speaking with my team and whatnot, since we just focus on ways of negative reinforcement and how citing these kids just seems to be reinforcing the negative impact of putting them down the criminal pipeline. With your upcoming problem, with what you're going to propose, is there any thought being given to codifying or creating created some kind of statutory method for us to be able to bring these kids into these programs? I mean, is there any thought we can give it? I can have referrals come in, but the referrals are fully voluntary. If they decide to leave, there's nothing I can do to keep them in the program. You know, I've got kids overdosing on Xanax, overdosing on all kinds of opioids. I've got kids, you know, smoking marijuana at the age of 8. And I can't, if they have no interest in staying in the program, through a referral, there's no way I can keep them. Now, through a citation, I can't, but it seems to be, we're moving away from that direction. So, has any thought been given to how we can get these kids in these programs? I'm talking about very kind of statutory proof, any kind of legal proof I can have that would give me the ability to hold in the program, or any other department that has a program like this.
I don't know if any members want to comment.
You described a common problem. And, yeah, I think it should be codified. I don't know that a low-level probation problem could occur. I don't like to hear what the JCPA is funding, you know, to keep these guys on voluntary and voluntary probation. I think the thing we have to do is muster the forces of the community, kind of, again, piggybacking on you and Kim, you almost have to have people out in the community that can call them mentors, call them whatever you want, call other people in your force, call the Boys and Girls Club that has an evening reporting center where you make a referral there, the kids somehow get grabbed, stay in. Yeah, we're dealing with human beings. So there's no perfection here in terms of, you know, making it happen, but you're describing the frustration that I think a lot of law enforcement, those who really care, it's the same frustration. You don't want to get it. Yeah, I've had mothers tell me that they have told their child to go out and commit crime so that they would come into the system and get services. So this is beyond just the standard field justice system services. You got to get up, behavioral health and public health and human services to get everybody involved.
So there is an awareness. Yes. To give a description of here's a little case. I've got it. I'm sorry.
I think that all of these conversations are amazing conversations, but we do want to be able to give everyone that wants to speak there an opportunity. And these are really thought-provoking conversations that we can have further discussion.
And by the way, the grants, as we all know, usually they're broken into small, medium, and large jurisdictions. So small jurisdictions are not cut out. So you should look into the grants and follow the details.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Jessica Ellis?
Jessica, before you start, can I get a sense of how many other folks
Sure,
are?
if people wouldn't mind letting us know, others who plan to come up and offer public comment, you could just show your hand if you'd like to go up. I'm not seeing other people.
Oh, that sounds great.
Because Jessica's got a lot to say. The best diversion program around.
Hi, I'm Jessica Ellis, Director at Sentinel Youth Services. And first of all, I want to thank this group. We're currently under a Title II grant, and the diversion program I'm going to speak with you about today was seeded by both a local funder, Philanthropy, the Urban Child Foundation, as well as a Title II grant to get us started a few years ago. Our agency, Sentinel Youth Services, has specialized in diversion since we began 40 years ago. So this is our realm, this is what we are experts in, as well as restorative justice. And one of the things that we did was, several years ago, about 5-6 years ago, we looked at a program out of Miami-Dade County that had transformed diversion in that county, and at the point of law enforcement involvement, but by keeping basically the kids' record clear. And that program was so successful, it's very similar to a lot of the things we were already doing as an agency. So we came here with the Title II grant and the local Every Child grant. We were able to seed a more comprehensive diversion process here for LA. And we met with Chief Beckett, Los Angeles Police Department, and he agreed to pilot this, and we innovated pre-booking diversion for the state of California. As far as we know, it's the only one of its kind in the state, where we get law enforcement to change their internal policies and practices. And when they encounter a youth that would otherwise for a misdemeanor or a felony, they would otherwise be arrested. They put that arrest on hold. There's no booking number, there's no fingerprinting, and when they complete our services, there's no arrest. And one of the ways we've got law enforcement buy-in is that if the young person completely fails services, they can still complete the booking and file at that point, which is very rare because our program is so successful. And in doing that, we've dropped recidivism dramatically. And we've been looking at kids with comparable crimes, whether we get them at pre-booking or at probation, because we also take diversion from probation and the court. Same crime, same basic circumstances. If we get them earlier, recidivism is even lower. So there's an impact that just having justice system contact has. So one of the things I wanted to, in what we've learned over the last few years, I wanted to encourage for this. So I really want to see entitled to a real focus on the early front end prevention. The more we can, versus reentry. Our kids in reentry need a lot of help too, but we need to keep them out of that system. It damages our kiddos so badly. And so the more we can just minimize all contact with the system. And that includes even the contact with law enforcement. So when our law enforcement pick up a kid, they are immediately handing them off to us and hands off after that. So we don't have a child reporting to the police department for a program, because that leads into some labeling in their head. Same with voluntary probation. It's labeling for the kids. They start to see themselves as that's my potential, that's who I am. So we can keep them out of that, and in youth development programs in their own community that are strengths-based, working on, look, here's your real potential, here's what you can do, let's get you engaged with the things that you're passionate about, as opposed to trying to fix you and like you're broken. That's where we really need to focus our energies. And I agree with Kim, besides diversion, even upstreaming from there to if we had invested well in our kids in the first place, we wouldn't be having so much of a diversion need. Although you get teenagers, they're always going to do something crazy. So the other part that I also really want to encourage that diversion be community-based for a couple reasons. And I really commend the law enforcement departments that are here running their own programs. There's clearly deep care in that. But also law enforcement are not youth development specialists. So they're very much trained and socialized in command and control. And so the attempts are very command and control oriented, even in the diversion programs. So the other piece is there's a real reluctance to go as far as diversion really can go. So the part that we're constantly working on with our law enforcement agencies, we go and we train them on the teen brain, the impact of trauma on behavior, and we have to do a lot of work to get the buy-in, to get them to let go. Because if you leave diversion simply to justice system actors, they will limit it to very minor crimes and first-time offenses only. And we do diversion with kids that are up to a third-time offense. We include felonies like burglary, assault, robbery, and have had phenomenal success at that. So it works even at the more serious levels, but it's really hard to get someone who's law enforcement justice system trained to really buy into that and fight for that. So you need the outside actor from the community pushing diversion further. And so we now have pre-booking diversion in half of LAPD, and they now want to go citywide. In Huntington Park, Hawthorne PD, Inglewood PD, El Segundo, Compton and Inglewood School Police. And we've been approached by several others, but we just don't have the capacity to serve them right now. And in that, we're literally rewriting their policies on the rest. The other big piece that we really encourage in the RFP is an engagement of the victim. And this is good for both victims, also for your politics. You know, you get happy victims that were engaged and not just left out of the process. And so then they're less likely to be, you know, organizing against these kinds of programs. But also it's good for the kids. So we sit our kids down with the person most impacted by their crime, and they have a chance to make things right. So they can also let it go. It doesn't define them anymore. It's not part of who they are. They've made it right. They can move on. And then, yeah, I think that's all I want to cover. Thank you.
Jessica, tell them a little bit about some of the mental health issues you bump into.
Yeah, so a large percentage of the kids, this is non-scientific numbers right now, these are kind of anecdotal numbers at the moment, but of all the kids that we see in diversion, I would say about a third of them are just, healthy kids with supportive families, and they're gonna be fine, but they're a teenager and they just did something stupid, because that's developmentally appropriate for teenagers. And do we have to criminalize every dumb mistake that teenagers make? And then about a third of our kids are struggling with acute trauma. So something just happened that's aggravating their behavior. We've had kids that are arrested the day their dad dies, because they acted up in school. And school never asked what was going on that day, they just went straight to escalating the situation. So trauma can really impact behavior. And then about a third of our kids are dealing with real mental health issues. We have a little girl, she's bipolar, was strong in the family, so she's starting to show signs of maybe bipolar disorder, strong ADHD issues, impulse control. She was in special ed. She came up, grabbed the teacher's wallet off the desk. Why is the teacher's wallet sitting out on the desk? I don't know. In her special ed class with impulse control issues. And they immediately hauled her out of as soon as they confronted her, she said, I'm sorry. But they hauled her out in handcuffs anyway. They know she's special ed. They know they're working on the impulse control issues. So and we've had kids that are hospitalized for psychosis. And so at the point of diversion, at the point of something happening, we can screen what's really going on, what's really behind the behavior, and individualize the
Instantly rather than waiting until
right.
It's so much.
Right.
Do you provide mental health treatment or do you refer out?
So our model, we really believe that kids belong in their own community with relationships that are long-term. So we operate more like a kind of crisis, almost legal intervention. Like we get law enforcement and the justice system to divert kids out of that system and spend a lot of our energy for getting kids out of that system. And then we screen for risks and needs and then connect them into the services in their own community. The primary service that we provide directly is the restorative justice piece and the meeting with the victim. And then a little bit of family intervention stuff directly, but if they need real mental health, we connect them to the best service provider in their community. And then work to engage them in long-term youth development activities in their own neighborhood.
Thank you. To the extent that you have, or any of our speakers have, any type of program description or a template, so Kim, for example, if you have a template that you're contemplating, something in writing that
she has a great report on the need for youth development centers.
Yeah, something that you could forward to us through.
Sentinel has great material.
So we could,
I'll send you our executive summary with our outcomes data.
From what I'm hearing is that I think it's very important to invest kind of in more of a community type program, right? And if you could just talk to us about what are the pros and cons on funding someone like yourself versus the police department to do this type of work?
So, and also I would say not all community programs are equal either. And part of that is we really need more investment in our community-based programs. So our community programs that are doing good stuff also need some investment so they can collect the data properly and really prove their outcomes. So I've run into some nonprofits, this kind of constant complaint about some nonprofits where like, we haven't measured if it works, we just know it works because it feels good. That's not good enough for our kids either. Like we need to be looking at outcomes and whether or not stuff really works. But we've also seen the same thing on the probation side. They keep getting funding without any accountability on whether or not it's working. So that accountability disconnect is on all sides. One of the things I've liked about the structure in particular of the Title II grant, I feel like it has the right mix between allowing us the creativity to do what we do and do what we know works, but holding us accountable with outcomes. Sorry, back to your question. The pros and cons to law enforcement versus community is law enforcement are not trained in youth development. They're not child development experts. So yet some cops who really care and they're trying, but even the question of wanting to force kids into programming is showing a disconnect of what is known to be best practice and what works, like motivational interviewing, letting someone come to their own conclusion about what they need to move forward in life, and letting the client sort of direct that in terms of where do I want to go in life and what do I need out of this versus we're going to tell you what you need out of this. So I think that's the biggest thing. And then the second part is the labeling. When you have kids having to report to an entity like an officer or probation, it gets into their head of that's who I am and that's what my future's going to be.
It's also much more costly. I mean,
Yeah.
the JJCPA funds a quote-unquote diversion. It's a diversion into probation. You're paying a probation officer. They have highly trained volunteer mediators. And what's the difference, the cost between New Directions in quotes and Sentinella per?
Yeah, our diversion runs, depending on low-risk kid, is about $800, a little less. High-risk kid might be about $4,500 to serve.
And what's New Directions? It's like $35,000 per kid, $35,000 versus safety. And he has had his hand up.
And so has Winston.
Okay, all right, I didn't see.
So you said that you were an awardee of the Title II grant, and through that, you made an evaluation that you reduced the recidivism rate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have, is that data attainable as well?
Yeah, we turn it in with all our reports.
Okay.
So our kids, we look at them a year after they complete services, so not just from the point of arrest, but after they close with us. And it's our recidivism about 8 to 11% get a new arrest is how we look at it. We don't look at convictions, we always have that information. And versus in the probation diversion, like probation department, a year out, kids' recidivism is about 26 to 31%.
And how many times have you been awarded the Title II grant? Was it just one time, or?
You know, I'm not sure. We have 2 back-to-back right now. I've only been back as the director for years, but I know we've gotten various BSCC grants for a couple of decades, or a decade. BSCC. Before it was the BSCC, it was called something else. So yeah, we had a lot of grants because we're
Good.
showing outcomes.
Right. It's just, my question was that we wanted to include that into the grant, is that, you know, evaluations to see if it works or if it's not. And it was, you know,
But they pay for those themselves, the grants don't pay for them.
The full budget in their
This is not
evaluation.
required.
I think it was a requirement that grant even, yeah. Good.
Thank you.
Just,
So they're doing that.
aren't you on that committee with the board of supervisors is formed on diversion? Because I think I've heard you speak before about pre-booking diversion and all the programs that you're talking about. And it appears to be a trend. This is not some isolated program that you're talking about. It seems like there's a trend across the spectrum, which now includes the board of supervisors and other counties that are looking at pre-booking diversion and looking at keeping kids out of the system entirely.
Yeah.
Not even making any kind of booking record or any kind of trace that they were arrested, and providing intensive services and making sure, well, we're trying to make sure that those cases are eventually dismissed and there's no trace of any arrests, etc. So aren't you on that committee that the board, or have you spoken at the board, that meeting that is looking at this whole issue? And I believe that we'll be issuing a report maybe next month on this area.
Very exciting that there's finally an openness to this in a way there hasn't been before. And I like to think it's because of the data we've been sharing to show that it works. And so I still think the caution there is that committee is talking about a database where that information can be looked at. And so one of the things that we built in is we have agreements from law enforcement not to record that this kid ever had law enforcement contact. So can't we use them later, use against them later in court, maybe on a subsequent case. We originally had DA buy-in on that, and there seems to be some backsliding, and I'm concerned a little bit about the way, how we're going to use that information against kids in the future if the county goes towards a statewide database of some sort. So I think there's still some caution to have there, and I think there needs to be more guidance to law enforcement to really think about whether or not they're the right entity of running themselves.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Did you have one more question? in terms of the Board of Supervisors, what they're doing on this, are they receptive to the idea that kids should also be diverted if they've had a second arrest or if they've been arrested for a felony? Or is it still just, okay, just kids who did?
I can't remember, Mr. Peters, do you remember if they've specified that yet in the county recommendations?
I think there's kind of a general reluctance to not make it too serious. For example, in 707B offenses that you mentioned earlier, there's a concern that it can't be too serious. So that the committee's kind of struggling with that issue, not to just make it low-hanging fruit, but to make it much more serious offenses or charges, and with the hope of diverting as many kids as
I heard it was everything under 707B.
And our Title II grant allowed us to create a committee of the DA's office, the public defender, law enforcement, probation, DCFS, and we meet every other month and do a consensus building on those issues. And so we got to a place with that team. They started out with first-time offenders only, minor offenses, and through proving through our data, we were able to get the buy-in and agreement to third offense and up to even kids under 13 for a couple of the 707Bs. We'll accept robbery, 13 and under robbery, and arson, our 707Bs.
Jessica, thank you so much.
Thank you.
your time.
Great. Yes.
Do we have any other members of the public who would like to provide information?
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Well, hearing no other comments, do we need to stay on till 6 or?
I don't believe we do. I think the meeting was posted to start at 4, so I don't think we're obligated. How many attorneys want to help me with that? It's gonna be.
Everybody's arriving.
The judge. He can decide.
Now you're.
All right. Well, let me first say thank you to members of the public for being here, and for those of you who shared your information. I think it's very important and helpful for us, as we do our work, so we really appreciate your information. And then I do encourage you, if you do have reports or information on your programs, if you could please forward them to the SCC so that they can send them to the committee members as well. So with that said, to the committee members, I would just say that we have a lot of work before us. You've heard a lot of really great things today, and kind of a long list of what our task is before us. I really appreciate staff providing kind of these priorities. It helps us start thinking and honing in on what some of the work we have to do in terms of feedback we got. So with that, if there are no other comments or anyone else, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Travel safely, everyone.